Yo, how are you doing, folks? Welcome to episode 26 of the Simpa Life Podcast. You are joined, rather, I am joined as always by Maka. I am Simpa, and that was a terrible introduction.
It
But
wasn't because technically, if you think about it, right, the people at home are joined. So you are joined by me, Maka, and the beautiful Simpa over here with his lovely t-shirt. What does your t-shirt say today?
just compassion. It's from a medical dispensary from a guy, an MS patient in Toronto, who set up his own dispensary after he found that cannabis obviously gave him a great deal of symptomatic relief. Really cool dude. Had the opportunity to spend a bit of time with him when I was out there and try some of the shop's wares, which was pretty cool.
Is that a Breaking Bad little nod at the end there? Was that with the T and the?
No, it's it's a blue. I'm colorblind. It's a green cross.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
Cool.
but I liked your philosophical slant there. That was good. That is good. They are joining us. I like
and
it.
I'm doing very well. Thanks for asking.
See, this was going to be the first week in 25 weeks. We would have got away with it. We would have got away without me asking you awkwardly, how are you doing? And you obfuscating the answer and ignoring it.
I think
Anyway.
there's an inherence there. We'll just leave it fly for today.
Anyway, folks, we are joined by a wonderful guest today. It is someone that I've known and followed for quite a while. She is ever present within the European cannabis industry and has actually completed quite a few firsts within the industry. Our guest today is Clara Herb, who is a French cannabis marketing expert and educator who is currently living in Barcelona. After working at Europe's first CBD cannabis startup, CannaVape, Clara launched her own CBD brand, the Tree CBD, aimed at providing more ethical CBD products. Later on in 2019, she also created Europe's first cannabis marketing agency, Herb & Co. So without further ado, I will throw you over to Clara herself to introduce herself a bit better and give you a better idea of her background and who she is.
Hi, guys. Thank you for this great introduction. I'm Clara Herb. I define myself as a cannabis marketer because today I'm the head of Herb & Co, which is a cannabis marketing agency, and we help to business to launch within the industry or to grow in new markets. And so to give you a bit of background, I started in cannabis in 2016 when I was lucky enough to meet a guy that said to me literally, we need someone that like cannabis and have a big mouth. Do you want to work for us? And I was lucky enough to be recruited by this guy from CannAvape, which later became Harmony. So I stayed 2 years in Harmony. I was in charge of marketing. So it was great because that was the first company to launch a CBD product in France. So we were really first movers. We opened the market. It was an incredible adventure. And after 2 years, Harmony was doing great. So I decided to leave to make my own CBD brand with two Spanish partners, which is called the Tree CBD. And it was we began to sell flowers, which was a success because in Barcelona we are lucky enough to have the clubs, so it was for us a great to enter the market. And within a year we became the first brand in Spain. And after a year in the Tree CBD, I decided to go back to my passion, which is digital marketing, to help other business to do what we managed to do with Harmony and the Tree CBD, and to promote cannabis to everybody, everyone, everywhere. And so that's what I'm doing today. I'm sharing my time in between the Tree CBD and Herb & Co. And it's fucking great.
Excellent. Well, yeah, it sounds like you've had quite a steep sort of trajectory there. You saying you entered the sort of industry in 2016 and you were very fortunate to be in a position to be part of one of the first startups to profit from that bulldozing of legislation, from really attacking and finding a space to create a market, and then being able to obviously evolve within that market to such a degree that you gained such expertise within that period of time to be able to establish Herb & Co. What sort of companies and people do you work with at Herb & Co?
So we started we mainly help CBD brands today because there's the brands that want to promote themselves. So for example, we had two clients in Belgium. One was doing oil, the other one had flower line. And then we had also in Germany, we have some in France. And except this, we also help new kind of business. For example, in France now we are launching.
No worries. Go ahead. Keep going.
So now in French we are launching Cannabis University and the formation for new professionals that want to convert themselves into the cannabis market. So we really here to help any kind of business. We also did the glass gallery here in Spain. We did the club also. It's really doesn't matter the kind of business as long as you are legal, you are ethic, and we want to promote you. It's really important for us. We pick our clients. And so any kind of business, but mainly the CBD brands because they are the ones today that are on the front line to promote their products.
Excellent. Yeah. So you mentioned about being involved in the French university around sort of cannabis education. Is that similar to either sort of like the cannabis college in Amsterdam or more of a Oaksterdam sort of situation that they've got in California?
So it's more like in Amsterdam because it's an institute and it's founded by private investors. So it's a private company. University is not the right term, it's an institute. And basically this institute is providing formations. They have two type of formations. They have a cannabis one and they have a cannabis culture one. And it's more an institute. The right word is institute, and it's a small group of pupils. It goes by promotion. So every year we have a new one. And at the end of this, they have a diploma, which is recognized. And so it's an institute. Yeah.
Excellent. I like how you said that you sort of split it into business and of culture. I think that's something that is missing from cannabis marketing and cannabis education, especially, is they're kind of stuck within the small place between a rock and a hard place, as it were, with legislation and with cultural acceptance. But it's great to see then the idea that promoting more of the culture that will permeate or will exist after the legislation is changed. Whereas I think that a lot of the material that's being created today is very much of the industry right now, rather than discussing or creating accreditation for future progress.
Yeah. Because I believe today, I mean, on the marketing side, we really need before seeking legalization, progress, etc. I believe we first need to educate everybody. Because now the first slowdown, the first thing why the industry is not growing is not the legislation, is a lack of education. And people today, they just don't know, and they just totally in fear because they don't have the right information. And I believe before everything, we need to educate as much as possible. So that's why today, in anything I'm doing, in any clients I'm having, I'm saying to them, if you want to grow, if you want to make money, if you want to, as a business, it's nice to be educating and shit, but you want profit, So I say, like, whatever you want, you first need to educate the people, and from there, when people know, then we're gonna be able to, think about like how the industry can expand really. But that's why today I'm focusing on the education on the people, because great people like you actually are taking care of the activism and the law side. But as a marketer, I'm really trying to first open the market, to really. I don't know if it answers the initial question.
No, I think.
Sorry, it does make sense. It does make sense if you think about it. I mean, we've had the idea of locally using cannabis to reinvest locally and strengthen communities, and obviously the promotion of new types of businesses that will affect that in a positive way is a very important thing to sort of point out, especially if people are more educated about and have the correct information. Then it's more likely that they'll sort of veer towards industries or created industries that would be more beneficial to a local community. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
I almost fucked that point up, but I rescued it right at the end.
But it's interesting what you said about reinvesting into the community, because here in Spain we have the cannabis clubs, and what they do, the cannabis social club, is very, very interesting. It's a place where everybody can become a socio, and when you become a socio, you give them the right to grow your plant, and so you can go pick up your plant and smoking on spot. And the thing is, like, everybody says that they don't have to make profits. This is wrong. They can do profits, but all the profits they make, they have to reinvest it into the club. So this is so interesting, because then that's when they're going to do conference, that's when they're going to make effort to show different sides of the cannabis club. So it's incredibly interesting to reinvest, but at the same time it stays a bit on a closed circle, when it will be very interesting to invest in capturing new people. And the goal is not to cap more people to make more money, but it's more people know about cannabis, more people know they have access to a natural way to cure a lot of things. It's not medical claim. I'm not a doctor. I can't give medical advice. But more people know there can be a solution, and more people can benefit from it. So it's super important.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that you brought up before about businesses being informed and sort of the general population being informed. Ultimately, if these businesses want to be successful in a sustainable industry, they need consumers. If the vast majority of the people don't know they've got an endocannabinoid system, they don't know what cannabis does, all they've ever seen is reefer madness propaganda that has been produced and put out by governments around the world. And then they've kind of met dare campaigns and various just say no sort of anti-drug rhetoric. This then leaves them very, very confused. And I think the clubs then, as you say, play a vital role in the community, because they create a safe space. This is one of the things that has been the cornerstones of what we do when we put on Durham City Cannabis Club events, is to try and create that harmonious, peaceful place where people can consume and for a small period of time forget that the authorities are going to persecute them, that the contents of their pockets could land them in prison. And I think what you said before about that closed loop system of finance can be an issue, because then it becomes more and more difficult to then up costs, because if you want to create a sustainable club model and then improve the experience as you go on, you need that money to invest. But if you've only got a limited number of members, then it can be quite difficult, which I suppose leads me on to, what was going to be my next question, which is, how have the clubs in Barcelona fared during the lockdowns and during the pandemic? Because I've seen a few different news articles suggesting that there are some movements in some of the clubs where they have been physically taken over by armed gangs. They have kind of turned up on the doorstep, chased them off, changed the naming of the club, and they now own the club. So I was just curious about your experiences with what's been going on recently.
So the clubs, I've been experiencing them for like 7 years now, and it's true that there is a big change, but I'm not sure it came really for the lockdown. I think it's right before, because basically for a long time the cannabis clubs were not legal, and one day they became legal, and they start giving license for place to open, and that at this time people, like it was around 2012, 2013, people that were getting lessons, it was really the growers that were growing the plant for the people. That was really the people that love the plant, the people that wanted, a bit like now in the UK, I guess, like if you open a club, it's because you're an activist, because you're ready to go against the law, because you're here to help the people, you're here for the plant. And the thing is, with the years, so the business went great. A lot of clubs did wrong by inviting a lot of tourism, by making a lot of profit, etc. And since that moment, the laws on the cannabis club have been restricted a lot. They had to comply a lot of more norms, so it was more and more costly, less and less interesting to have profit. And at that point, that a lot of clubs actually had to close. Then, of course, the lockdown didn't help, but that's a movement that happened a few years ago already. And the thing is, now what happened is like license are being bought by people that really don't care about the plant. That's, I guess, what you call the gang, because they invest into the sex club and into the cannabis club, and they're just here to make money. So they open a lot of different clubs in a lot of different locations, and it's commercial, and the Instagram is nothing about the plant. It's girls naked, and it's we totally lost the plant, the culture of the plant, but it's not all the clubs. There is still some clubs that are like the best, like La Calada, Dr. Do, Mr. Teddy. I mean, the ones that are here since the beginning, that still have the community, taking care of the community, like, and still move the good value. But as you said, now it's new for a few years. We have the clubs, commercial clubs opening, and they did take over the clubs from activists, from people that were here for the communities. And it's a shame. I believe it will be a spot for everyone, but now it's really taking over because of the money. The one with the more money is the one that is buying the more license, and it's a shame. It's a shame. It's true. It's true. You're right on that point.
Do you think it may end up, obviously the new, and I believe first female mayor of Amsterdam is obviously trying to shake up the sex worker industry and cannabis tourism within the city. And one of the things that they've proposed is basically a ban on tourists. And this has culminated because of a rivalry issue with suppliers. So the coffee shops were allowed to hold 500 grams per day as a kind of discretion. Once it's sold, another 500 comes in, and it was called the backdoor supply problem. So that they was allowed to legally sell them. You could carry 5 grams on the street. And so there was this discretion around it. What then happened is, once the real organized criminals got involved, is they found basically a loophole, or forced the Dutch government's hand, that if they fired one single shot at a coffee shop, a gunshot, the establishment would have to shut for 2 weeks while an investigation was performed. So what then happened is the gangs would then basically go to the owners of the coffee shops and go, you buy from us or we shoot you down. And it's not to kill them. They literally drive by at 2, 3 in the morning. Somebody on the back of a little scooter fires one shot into it and drives away. And it shuts them down. They lose the profits and everything for 2 weeks. Then the gang comes back to them and goes, do you want us to supply you now? And I worry that that's going to become a similar situation in Spain. And I think what you said before about the money, I fear part of this is coming from across the Atlantic, because they've still not figured out social consumption lounges, as they want to call them over there. They still haven't quite figured out clubs or any social consumption spaces and model. A lot of the people with the money and the influence then fly over for events like Cannabis, and they end up pumping so much money into the economy over a weekend that the clubs look for the rest of the year and go, well, we should live for this. And if they can then create those connections and start importing the Californian, the Canadian genetics, they can then charge 2, 3 times the price of local sown, while creating a market for them to sell their Spanish genetics abroad as other exotics. So it kind of, it creates it's a wide gray area for some perhaps not best intentioned people to end up running and regulating the supply of cannabis.
What did you say? The last sentence, I didn't get it.
Then it ends up leaving people that as you said before, really don't have the plant's best intentions in mind in charge of regulating the supply of cannabis.
Yeah, of course. This is it's all about no, sorry, I don't have anything clever to say.
It's absolutely fine.
No, I'm just gonna repeat what you said. I mean, you just totally. Like here in Spain, the problem is like we don't have a clear law on what can be done when for example in Spain the clubs don't have the right to invite the tourists, because basically in Spain the law on the cannabis club, on cannabis in general, says that you have two place to smoke, two right to smoke. The first one is at home, so you have the right by law to have 6 plants at home. Then you grow your plant, you can smoke them at home, you can like do whatever with them at home, but you can't take them out, you can't walk with the tree in the street with them, you can't sell them obviously, so or you grow. And if you don't have the capacity to grow your own plant, then that's when you go to a cannabis club, and by becoming a member you give them the right to grow your plant, and therefore when you go in a cannabis club you go to consume your part of the plantation of the club, and therefore you can consume this part in the cannabis club, but you don't have the right to take it out, you don't have the right to sell it, etc. So this is the law on cannabis club, and normally, like, if you don't live in Barcelona, you shouldn't be able to enter in a club. Or if you are in a club, you should be only in one club. You know, like that's the essence of it. But I never saw a club being punished for having a lot of tourists. I haven't seen a club being punished for not reinvesting the profit. So that's the open door to all the people that just don't care, you know, and that just here for the profit because it's easy, nobody checks. People is putting a lot of money into cannabis. So yeah, of course, if we had a clear law on what can be done and what can't be done, for sure it would reduce this kind of situation, you know, because now it's just gonna go exponential. So that's a shame, you know.
Yeah. Is there much of a movement at the minute to get Spain to shore up its laws, or are people seemingly happy with the status quo?
Now there is a big group of activism here that was called La Rosa Verde, and they changed now recently. But they are very active, actually. They like, just lately there was a big thing because a club owner was sentenced to jail because he had too much stock in his club, but it was like an activist from the beginning. Like, he was one of the first ones to have a club. He always invests in the money he made was always invested in the club. So it was really unfair. Like, this kind of this group, La Rosa Verde, went in front of the government to explain that was the case, and they managed to change the law on the fact that now the clubs have more versatility on the stock they can have, because before they could only have flowers, and since that case they opened the club to more products, so they can have, like, for example, now hash or edible or all these things. So there is indeed a group specifically in Barcelona that is fighting a lot, that is fighting for the clubs, that are fighting for the club owner, that is fighting for the right of the cannabis consumer. And then on a national level, there is a political parties that are actually pushing for cannabis to be open. And now recently we have clubs all over Spain. Before it was just in Catalonia, but now there is a new, it's not really a regulation, but there is a new, it's not a law, but like in Barcelona, it's like something specific, like a tolerance, or I don't know how to say it. Sorry?
They're like tolerating the clubs in the other regions?
Yeah, exactly. Like nothing says that it's legal, but now it's tolerated. There is, like in Spain, you know, there is this thing that's okay. You can have a license if you pay they are paying tax, you know. So as long as they're paying tax,
it's interesting because I mean, is there a movement in Spain to unionize amongst cannabis clubs for the, as it were, good apples to gather together and get themselves out of the bad apple bucket?
So that's a good question. You know, the thing is, here the clubs have there is a lot of competition in between the club, and that was before this takeover by the Russian, American, etc. So I think La Rosa Verde, the thing I was saying before, I think is taking this role to gather the cannabis club and to fight for them. I'm not sure there is a movement specific to the cannabis club. I didn't hear about it, but I think La Rosa Verde is fighting for them, and I don't believe anyone is taking care to push the bad ones. Maybe I should do it then.
It's one of those things we see whenever we have a slight tolerance of a drug market, whatever the drug is or wherever it is in the world. People that are very happy to live in a criminal underworld, commit mass criminality, as in they are typically violent sort of people that don't pay any tax, are not interested in their societal responsibility, are quite happy to just mooch off the land and rob what they can. They find these small pockets and they exploit them. And we saw this with sort of soft touch in California first, in America, with the medical marijuana program. And that was very quickly exploited by corrupt doctors who were then bought out basically by cartelled individuals that then became companies. They then were able to exert and put their pressure on other states and other regions until these companies have become what we're supposed to accept as legitimate entities. Yet a lot of the roots of them come direct from criminality. So I think that we need to see movements in places like Spain and Amsterdam where different discretionary models are being trialed in the real world, not theoretical, not data collection, but actually we're witnessing what happens. And what happens when, if you could see it under a microscope, is the cannabis is actually generating economic benefit and very little social harm. But because it's still tied up with, say, in Amsterdam, the sex trade, lager lout tourism and other drug consumption, it muddies the waters. The same is then true with, I suppose, criminal organizations trying to exploit the clubs in Spain. Yeah. So that being said, what do you think could be done, having been someone that has been so close to the associations and to the clubs?
What could be done? We need to regulate. We just need to regulate. And the problem now is like the license. Before you had to show, you had to deserve your license. You know, you needed to have the place, you needed to show your plantation, you needed to make your plan. Like that was controlled, you know. The thing is now, the people are rebuying the license. So there is no control anymore. So the first thing to do would be to forbid the reselling of license, because anyone now can buy a license, even if they don't live in Spain. You know, like there is Russian owners, they never put a foot in Spain, and they have 3 clubs here. You know, how can they care? So I think the first thing is really to stop the reselling of the license, and then is to I think honestly stop the resale of the license, and we have a big time, because before you had to prove you were a Spanish citizen, you had to prove you were living in Spain for a few years, you have to prove. That's the good clubs with this license. That's the clubs that are here, that are sustainable, that are ethic, that are here to help the people, and that understood that the cannabis club is to help the population. And the ones that didn't deserve them, they are the ones that just do it for the money. So having more control, always more control, but the good one. Because now they're controlling the clubs that are here for years, they're controlling maybe there is some corruption behind, because it's really weird that nobody is watching at the big clubs, and like so more control and fair control.
I think maybe community control. This would be something that would work well with the union of clubs. Like I said before, that if enough of the people that, as you said, the activists, the people who fought to win this right, that are now running their establishments to better their communities, not to profit themselves, they should be rewarded for that in a way, not financially, but in a way that goes, you guys know what this is about. So put into a position where they can self-regulate from best practice. And I think exactly what you were saying before, the resale of licenses, this is something that the Americans and Canadian big companies are trying to get around, and they're just merging and buying out, so that by the chain of it, they can buy minority-owned licenses, which are becoming ever more restricted within, or rather unrestricted within, American markets. So they're incentivized first. They're buying out their brand through a corporation, so that the giant Coca-Cola of cannabis has all these licenses, but they haven't got one of them. They've just bought them out. Yeah, exactly. So I think that the same risk could then occur in Spain, even if we do sort of regulate. So I think there needs to be that internal regulation of the good people, the good guy, as it were, standing up against the people that are just flowing in at the minute and busting the industry at its seams, because they can see themselves earning a quick buck out of cannabis.
Yeah. You know also what is happening here on talking about community, but the problem is like in French you say you're cutting a head and there is tree that is growing, is that there is a boycott from the, for example, from the people that know the value of the cannabis clubs that I have for a long time. They boycott the kind of clubs, you know. And so that's also a first measure. We're trying to say to people, you know, don't go there because he's doing that, and don't go there. But the thing is, like, these clubs, they don't care about the community. They just go for the young girls. They just go for, like, you know, they just apply a marketing that they don't care if the community don't like them, because they're not here for them. And there is always young people, because, for example, today the clubs are close to the less than 21. These clubs open them for at 18, sometimes even 17. So they create markets, you know, they create a market that was not able to go in the cannabis club. So totally, from the community of the users, from the community of the owners, it shows that community must stand up for herself in a way, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. The thought I had there is, sort of, we were talking back and forth, that was mulling on the back of my brain, was that a lot of the culture that we're seeing is really morphed out of being the diversity of a cannabis consumer, in that we welcome you because you consume cannabis, to almost that of a drug dealing culture. So some of the clubs that then are predominantly occupied by late teenagers, early 20-year-olds trying to get their Instagram pictures and trying to get the numbers up, they're more interested in being seen with certain strains and cultivars, or at certain clubs, being able to check in certain places on social media, than they are about learning about the plant or how it affects them, and the potential harms and benefits that can come from it. Because if they're consuming high amounts of THC just to be seen spending money, and to be seen living a, sorry, but it's a crass expression, but baller lifestyle, you know what I mean, though? But
fucking neoliberalist. Just go with that.
No, but you know, do you know what I mean, though? They are trying to live to a certain facade, rather than a community space that is welcoming of the diversity of all consumers. They're kind of narrowing their entrance and going, you kind of have to dress a certain way, act a certain way, to then fit in within our club. But so what they're doing is that they're almost creating the consumer for that, through the perpetuation of the culture.
It's cyclic, because this isn't a new thing. This is, do you know what I mean? This is generation after generation after generation get drawn into this type of thing, into capitalism, into that sort of lifestyle, that materialist sort of lifestyle. And I fear that
also this teenager, I see them here, they just because our generation, we fight hard to fight the cliche, you know, to say like the cannabis consumer, it can be everything. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, a businessman, etc. These teenagers are just totally comforting the cliche not of the stoner, but here, for example, of Barcelona, they're like trappers, so like they kind of remake it illegal, they kind of remake it dark, they kind of remake it, and you're like the girl, it's not, they kind of not helping the cause, and you're like, guys, you're trying to make it open to your grandma, and right now even your grand sister won't want it. So yeah, it's always the same. We need to educate them, and
but I mean, listen, when you're young, like, you don't fucking listen to anybody. Oh, I fucking didn't. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's your ego is so strong at that fucking point that you know what you want. So fuck everybody else at whatever echelon of cheekiness that you want to fucking go with. So my concern would be, if we're sort of, how do we sort of widen that then? Remove that expectation, because it's not just new to cannabis. What else can we do to remove the limitations that are being placed on the club environment and the stigma that is carried with that sort of environment for the general punters? Say, like, the lads that like only to drink beer all the time, that kind of way, and don't know anything other than cannabis, drug, bad, right? So I think, just to sort of go back to what your original points were, Clara, about focusing on sort of education. I had an idea, right? Focusing on pre-existing businesses within sort of localized communities and educating them to the commercial or the capitalized potential that fucking the plant has, right? And the only reason I said this, I'm completely anti-capitalist. I would, in an ideal sense, I wouldn't want that to happen. However, if more people are getting more interested in potential income in that regard, because money fucking talks at the end of the day. Do you know that kind of way? Can we not use your approach to go educate these people to go, look, you can cut your losses. You can fucking, go to farmers and go, look, you're struggling with biodiversity. You're struggling with any of these things. Do you know about the nutrients that you can get by introducing this stuff into your fucking environment? Do you know that kind of way? I think we really need to fucking double down on that style or that side of a pushback, and completely remove the attraction from or the expectation from capitalist style businesses or limited clubs. Now, I'm not shitting on clubs. What I'm saying is basically there's a certain sort of, there's a boxed inness. Do you know that kind of way? They have an awful lot of the preventative measures, the fences already put up. Do you know that kind of way? So how can we think about that outside of that box? Well, maybe that sort of education could be used eventually in conjunction with the club model, if you see what I mean. What are you going to say? Look, we can smile.
I was going to put all of what you've just said into one sentence.
Fine, do that. I had my fucking 5 minutes. I'm happy. Go ahead.
So I think what you're asking there is how we can use the clubs to perpetuate education about the other benefits and applications of cannabis that aren't it as a drug.
Not necessarily. It's more of a sort of a side venture that would end up being used with the clubs. So you'd have to almost use people like yourself, Clara, digital marketers, the people that are educated in capitalism. Do you know, not in a negative sense, but they fucking know how to actually make this work. How can that be applied to other aspects of the communities that sit outside the clubs? Do you see what I'm saying? And then hit them with the 1-2, fucking extra bit in clubs here. I got my reverse cameras all mixed up. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Do you mean we need to educate? What I understand, but I'm not sure I understand well.
Okay. That's okay.
But what I understand is you're trying to say that we need to educate the business in their language so they can perpetuate the business. No?
Exactly.
So that's actually what I'm doing with Herb and Co. Because like when you're a business, you're not an activist, but when you're a cannabis business, you need to be an activist. So somehow I'm always trying to talk in terms of business when I'm saying to them, look, by being an activism, that is a business strategy. That is being an activist can be capitalist in your language, you know? And that's what I'm trying to make understand the business is like I'm trying to make them understand how cannabis is how the situation is cannabis now, how it should be for them to achieve their goal of money, of capitalism, of fame, of ego trip and shit. And we always need to talk in their language. In their language, it's always like how do they make more money? How do they make more money? It's opening the market. How do they open the market? Is educating or inspiring because now it's the only way. So that's how I'm trying to join the boss, like the company's goal that is money and the community's goal that is just cannabis everywhere and for the
green energy, for instance.
Freedom, I think, is the lowest common denominator of the community. It is the one thing that I think drives us all. We do not want to be fearful walking down the street. We do not want to see a blue light and have that kind of anxious feeling and your heart kind of goes for a second and you think, what's in my pockets? Where am I? What am I doing? We shouldn't have that sustained psychological attack from the establishment. We should have the same protections as an alcohol consumer, somebody that consumes caffeine or tobacco. I think the true freedom, it's just a spectrum. So some people are happy that, decriminalize, that's the first step, and I'll settle with that. Some people, like myself, are slightly more extreme and are kind of not going to stop fighting until it is like alcohol is now, because it's a lot less harmful, but it should be regulated in the same sort of way. We shouldn't then force the other substances into cannabis. We should use cannabis as the measure to free the other substances, in my opinion. And I think that the way you can combine these two things wonderfully is exactly what you're saying, through education. So the clubs, for example, they're growing, say, 6 plants per person. You then have 1,000 members. You've got 6,000 plants. You've got the stalks, the sticks, and the stems of all of those plants. That then could be used as biomass. It could be used to produce graphene. It could be used in a multitude of other ways that I imagine currently it's just mulch. It's just going back into, if it's lucky, some form of either no-till or some form of composting. But more than likely, it's just going to go to waste. Whereas if we kind of looked to vertically integrate and diversify from just the drug aspect, I think the community of clubs could earn themselves a much stronger footing within the rest of, especially Catalonia, with wanting to have more autonomy from Spain by being able to bolster the rest of its industry. You think of how much Spain exports in terms of fresh produce, or in terms of what they produce in seeds to the international market. If these were then ran by the clubs as well, all of that extra income, rather than creating these huge profitable industries, would still create the profitable industry, but the majority of that money would build the Spanish people up first. It wouldn't then end up opening another cookie store somewhere or opening another whatever brand here, there, and everywhere. You know what I mean? It would actually help the people that created the environment for this profit to happen. It's a hell of a ponder there, Maka.
It's an interesting point, I think. I'm just, what is the resistance then? Do you know what I mean? Because it feels like there's a missing piece. You've got a reluctance on almost every government side to fully embrace the plant, because of, I don't fucking know why, really, to be quite honest about it, because they're creating so many fucking problems for themselves in this regard, because you're preventing things like vertical integration from happening. You're preventing the removal of said stigma. Say you might have conglomerates that would be more comfortable speaking to somebody that has, a fucking suit on, the tie, that works in digital marketing, and would actually listen to Clara over a store owner or not store owner, a fucking club owner. Do you know, club owner going, I have all the same fucking information. Do you know that kind of way? I'm just thinking, like, how the fuck do we get that connection to happen? Do you know that kind of way? That's the fucking missing piece, because the lack of clarity is it's obviously is driven by some sort of not mistrust, but like misplaced faith in fucking prohibition. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and even when you get to the likes of Canada, who has 48 laws, I can never remember the fucking number, right? But it's half-assed shit. Do you know what I mean? You've still got black markets. You've still got problems. You see my problem. You've put up all of these stopping points, and without thinking about how everything is fucking connected, and it's really fucking disheartening and disappointing to consider that there really isn't an environment where that freedom that you've just said, Simpa, isn't fucking there. You can't just walk down, you go to any store or whatever and pick something up and just go outside and start fucking puffing it in Canada. No. Fuck you. Do you know that kind of way? I mean, it's nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. So I appreciate that there was quite a few points in there, and it was more of a frustrating vent than a singular sort of response to what you've just said. But, you know.
Your answer is sat here in our guest.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to get at. Yeah.
Yeah, Clara is trying to unify marketing with education, with actually not just creating a space for companies to profit, but teaching them the basics.
Exactly.
Because the sheer number of companies around the world that have gone, I have money, that will make me more money, and they go and give it to somebody like Clara that will have no soul. I'm not saying you do, but I'm saying that you don't, sorry. But somebody in your position that is literally just going, I want to make all the money.
Yeah.
They can very quickly connect those dots, and they miss the fundamentals. And if they miss the fundamentals of the science or the basics of the plant, once they're then not working with somebody who is educated, they could end up creating a very dangerous product. They could end up mislabeling, mishandling, breaking a lot of laws, and potentially causing great harm. So the point that I think Clara has made most clearly this evening is education is it's the first, middle, and last step to all of this. It has to be side by side, because we can't just allow ourselves to ever become too relaxed within the science of this, because it evolves every single day. And one thing we're teaching today, saying is this is fact. A discovery tomorrow will show us to be entirely wrong. And we're still talking about laws and legislation that were written 60 years ago. You think of how much discovery we have made in 60, 70 odd years, and the fact that we're having to still have these kind of conversations. But I think it is really, to me, inspires me and fills me with optimism that companies are receptive to what it is that you are selling, I suppose, in this sense, Clara, that they're actually going, oh shit, yeah, we don't want to just make money for the next 3 months. We want to know what's going to happen with the law change.
Exactly.
And actually the good ones are going, no, we want to make that law change.
Yes. And here's the thing.
Exactly.
Sorry, go
But
ahead.
you know, with Herb & Co, we're really careful, because we only working with people that want to work for the cause. You know, every time I have a new client, I always say to them, like, if you enter in the cannabis industry, you need to become an activist. Because I actually had to refuse a few clients, particularly Israel one, that I could ask him anything. You know, it was, what are your goals? Like, what is your vision for the future? Like, and it's all about money. And he didn't even know CBD was a different molecule than THC. You know, he was just like, yeah, if you can find CBD without THC, then we're gonna make money. And the companies now that are not educated and that are coming for the market have the whole power to kill the market. And for example, in France, it was in 16, 17, so the market opened a bit, like CBD companies, first Harmony, and then a few came, like Okahan, etc. have made so many, they went in front of the government, like to change a law. Like we really, for 2-3 years, we put such an effort in going for the government, changing the laws, educating the people in the right way. Like this was such a work, and therefore the CBD legalized in 18, didn't legalize, but a new law passed to say that CBD couldn't be illegal in Europe. Mm-hmm. So that's on what the CBD shop opened in France. But there is one guy that has nothing to do with the cannabis industry, that knew nothing about cannabis, obviously neither about the industry, took the buzz, and like a week after CBD, this new law passed, he opened like coffee shops in Paris, everywhere, where you could see the big CBD birds in the window shopping when it was illegal. It's still illegal to show the products. So it was like coffee shop with big birds and like promo, like big promo all over the city, like young people queuing in front of, like making all the social media with governments was afraid of this. Of course, it took it really bad. So on 1 week after, we had a new law saying that we couldn't sell CBD flowers, and saying that all the CBD products must be done with CBD extracted from the seed and the stem.
Same as we have in Britain.
Like clever, But all that, so they made it illegal. Clearly, they made it illegal 2 weeks after European Union says they couldn't make it illegal. And all that because of one fucking guy that knew nothing, just about there was money to be made, and he killed the whole France industry. And today in France, just a few months ago, Europe criticized France for putting CBD illegal, because in Europe you can't forbid a product to cross the European barrier if you can't show it's an issue for public security or public health. And because France can't prove that with CBD, they had now to change the law. And so just now in France the situation is changing a law for CBD, but without uneducated people and without interested people, we would have been for 2 years, 3 years already with a clear CBD market. So
Is there now a risk of a resurgence, another one of these guys popping up and going, I'm going to do exactly the same thing, and you end up going round the carousel again?
Yeah, for example, he got justice on this guy. He got into justice problem. I think he don't have the right to work anymore. Like he
banned him from the industry, sort of thing.
Yeah, something like this. But we always we never protected from assaults, and that's an issue, and that's why I think the most we explain to people, and most assaults will be ashamed to be assaults. If everybody know, because now if nobody knows they can just, for example, coffee shop, nobody knew, that he couldn't do that. Everybody was happy, blah blah. Nobody knew. It just killed the industry. But if people were more aware, but I think we never protected from those people.
It's interesting, because I suppose the ignorant in our history have simultaneously held us back, but also pushed us forward. Because without his ignorance, in a lot of ways, the system wouldn't have gone, then that's not what we meant. So they then wouldn't have been able to go back to the drawing board, take that minute and kind of go, what is it that we're going to do? Obviously, it is then international pressure that is then kind of forced their hand. But it's going to be very interesting, because obviously we over here in our little island are no longer part of Europe, apparently. Brexit is kicked in Article 50, and without getting too political to our listeners, things are pretty difficult at the minute in terms of importation, exports, in terms of treaties, etc. The European Union, however, are looking quite far ahead. And they're now starting to recognize that there's somewhere in the region of 700 to 750 million people in the mainland European area. And that if there's one trading bloc, they're legalized, legitimized, and regulated in some form cannabis market, they would dwarf the entirety of North America. So Mexico, North America is in the United States, and Canada. So that sort of NAFTA area, as it were, that North America Free Trade Agreement, to go back to Bill Clinton's sort of pipe dream, is looking to be built on cannabis. And I think the European Union, that sort of NAFTA combination, as it were, are looking at China. These three areas are starting to recognize that, wait, cannabis isn't just a drug. It's not just about novel applications of certain compounds. It's the technological advancements that it offers us. China, for example, I think there's 600 and something intellectual patents for cannabis-derived technologies. Over half of them are owned by the Chinese state. So they're moving ahead really far and fast with trying to understand what this will look like in 10, 20, 30 years. So I kind of feel that we as activists and we as people in the lower echelon of, I suppose, the Western market, we're kind of being controlled by, I think, the elites within our community, the big investment firms, the individuals that have trillions. They're waiting to see the right player do it in the right way. Then they're going to back it in the hope of creating an economic trading bloc that can go against these things. So for now, they're quite happy to import and allow certain things to sort of free flow. But I think as a body, cannabis is the future. There is no way to deny it. As Jack Herer famously said, cannabis is our future, or is the future of all mankind, or there won't be one. And when you really look at the technologies, if you really look at our history and the fact that it was with us for millennia, then there's this 150-year-old blip of us trying to eradicate it around the world and then succeeding to a certain or lesser degree in terms of its wild availability. The damage that's caused to the environment, the damage it's caused to industry by allowing petroleum and petroleum-based plastics, by allowing energy production from fossil fuels that are not necessary, through creating ethanol fuels rather than bioethanol fuels from cannabis seed oil. So there's all of these consequences that they're now, I think, looking at basically reversing. But the powers that be could never give us as in the people that know this shit, the people that have been screaming about it while they've wagged their finger and gone, you're wrong and you're bad for thinking that, and someday you'll get your comeuppance kind of thing. They're now going to build this industry and they're going to shut the door on behind us. Yep. So even if they don't manage to criminalize us, they will take our ideas and present them as new innovations. They will patent them. They will create a whole echelon of industry that we'll just have to marvel at while the crumbs of industry fall at us, unless I believe that the answer to a lot of the questions we've presented this evening is the same thing I'm arguing in the UK now, is unity. True unity between the people who don't just want to get this legalized, make some money and retire, the people who have always fought for this plant and will always fight for it, who know the culture and the community and the history and want to honor that, respect that. They want to see the dealers and the healers and the community leaders of prohibition be recompensed and actually given an opportunity to build this industry, because their knowledge is invaluable. We can either wait 20, 30 years for a university or a laboratory somewhere to discover what some guy called Mike down the road has known for 15 years in the way that he's developed his plants, but nobody's bothered to ask him. Or worse, they've locked him in a prison cell. You know what I mean? We're losing millions of people's lived experience and their knowledge and their passion by criminalizing them. So if we can unify in everything from, like I say, literally dealers, growers, everybody from all walks of life that truly has that vision and that passion to combine, the potential of that movement around the world could be huge. I look towards LGBTQ community and their progression over the past several decades and how they've unified and dealt with certain inner beefs to then create this stance of, no, we're persecuted by the other. We should not otherize each other. And I think if we don't have that conversation with ourselves, we miss it. So if the brands that have made their money off the backs of the activists don't then come back and go, come on, guys, we'll give you jobs or whatever, and we'll help you figure out the next thing and help fund that next step. It's reciprocal. We're crossing an open water of prohibition and it's like there's only one or two logs. So each time we've got to take the one from the back. But if we're all stood on the log, there's no progression. We have to move forward together to get across here. Otherwise, Coca-Cola, Starbucks, Microsoft, Google, they're just going to come in and just go, thank you. And they'll buy the industry. And it will become so standardized and homogenized that it will lose everything we fought for. It will lose the history and its passion and its, in a lot of ways, its purpose. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's almost
I totally...
Go ahead, Clara.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's only by being one strong force and really we're gonna make it work. The only thing is I'm afraid the big buyers, I call them the big buyers, meaning the ones that are gonna come and buy us or buy our soul, but like coming like the pharmaceutics, the big, once it's legalized, because I've been seeing it like the big American company are just ready to come in Europe. They're just waiting for the day the law is changing. The day after, they have the headquarters, they have everything here already. And the only thing is, like, I totally agree with you. I'm afraid that they don't have the people fighting since the beginning and that we are here for the plant. We don't have the same interest as the people that will come to manage the industry, you know. And I'm afraid, like, if we really want to follow them, at some point we will have to sell our soul once again, because, for example, their big goals, they want to have a way to have how do you say, like, unify the cannabis, you know what I mean? Like, they want to be able to pattern and to have a way to grow always the same kind of cannabis.
Standardize the industry.
Exactly. When all the interest of cannabis in its diversity, like it's like we can't standardize like cannabis, you know, like, and so I believe that, I do believe what you say, but I'm afraid our interests are too far away to really go in one voice. I'm sure we can find some way to fight together, some agreement, but somehow they always have they will always have the power to say, like, shut up, we're gonna do our way. So that's why I'm trying to be millionaire before that happens, so I can fight the billionaires. You know, that's my goal with I'm chasing.
It's a good ambition. It's a good way to fight from the inside, from the inside in.
Exactly.
I am pretty sure that I am already viewed as far too cynical by a lot of the people that will establish the industry to actually even offer me a paid position within some of their projects, I imagine. But it doesn't. I would like to hope so. But ultimately, I think that my responsibility as an activist, or my kind of obligation to cannabis, because of what cannabis has given me over my lifetime, is to in some way either inspire, gather, help in some which way, cobble together a coalition of willing individuals that are capable and competent to be the ones to set what legislation looks like, to move beyond ideas like decriminalization and legalization, so that they can't just suddenly take the industry. Because it's not a case in a lot of places, unfortunately, that they're just sat at the door kind of going, anytime, any day now, any day. They're in boardrooms, they're in parliaments, they're whispering in politicians' ears, they're promising them board positions on companies, they're setting up all kinds of investment firms. A lot of sitting MPs in the UK are currently invested in cannabis. It is getting quite a ridiculous state of affairs. And they're pushing for the law to change to benefit the corporation. I mean, we look at Tilray and Euphoria, two of Canada's largest cannabis companies. When their merger goes through later this year, they're going to be one of the largest internationally exporting producers in the world. They've already, via Tilray, been knocking on the British door for several years. They're already intimately involved in projects that are popping up in some of the islands around between France and the UK. They're intimately involved in the supply of air quotes medical cannabis. They're using medical cannabis as the Trojan horse to get their version of recreational cannabis passed. a kind of Canada 2.0, if you will, where they've learned the mistakes, they've got a bit more behind them, and they understand how to quash a bit more of the unregulated market. And it's again what we said before, in each territory, they kind of get to test what works and what doesn't. And this is all still just a giant experiment for whoever gets to be the one that sits down with the UN. And that's going to be the Americans, because they effectively, through the World Health Organization, pushed to then create the 61 Convention. It was Harry J. Anslinger and the weaponization of the war on drugs against, or rather to proliferate racism and economic classism within the states that led to this convention being signed. So when the states look to federalize later in this year, next year, they along with the Canadians and along with other big international players will be sat around that table where they'll get to carve up the global market. So they're quite happy to accelerate all of these experiments. I mean, France has obviously taken on a very limited so-called recreational experiment. They've also taken on a limited medical, in air quotes, medical cannabis experiment. And they've chosen suppliers from around the world, and that seems more of a bidding war, an opportunity for those 6 companies to kind of go, this is what we can do, this is what we can do, and whoever has the best data wins access to the country. So we're already seeing that perversion and corruption by these huge players, but even behind the scenes of them, there are the huge guys, the investment firms that own most of the traditional industries, be it energy, agriculture, plastics, textiles. Mm-hmm. They're looking at this and going, as soon as they've figured out this drug argument and all the laws are gone, we can come in and basically convert our cotton to cannabis. We can come in and switch our petroleum to bioethanol. And I think a lot of companies are already doing the work. So we've said a few times on this podcast that Shell are now an energy company, not an oil producer. So they're rebranding, they're marketing, they're starting to understand that they need longevity. So they're looking at this. So that's another industry that's pressuring it. Look at Canadian investment. The vast majority of their cannabis industry is owned by tobacco and alcohol. So we're already seeing these huge forces sort of conglomerate, and it's, I use the analogy of the big fish eats the little fish until there's only sharks left. And then when that happens, even the sharks will starve because there's nothing left for them to eat. They'll cannibalize each other, and the companies will eat each other until it's like food in the UK is run by about 5 or 6 brands. Like 5 or 6 companies own everything that everybody eats. And the same will happen to cannabis unless we can limit in the same way that we were looking or discussing with clubs about licenses, meaning that you can't produce unless you're going to help the people, you're going to help the community. It's not about you have the infrastructure or that you can make X amount of profit a year, because once those companies get large enough, they become like Google or Apple, and they don't pay tax anywhere. So they're actually making us more impoverished. They've become the dealers after paying the governments to criminalize us, and then we don't even see any of their benefit.
Yeah.
But very good point. And to come back to France, now what is happening, it's actually a scandal because everybody is celebrating because France just launched experimental medical cannabis distribution. So basically they're going to pick numbers of patients that will have access to cannabis products. Everybody celebrating like it will be a great thing, but this is a total bullshit, and I'm getting so mad at the misinformation, because what really happens now is they say that they're going to make a test for 2 years. It was supposed to happen last year. You don't realize how many lobbies just push. It's just happening now. And they say like, we're going to see what happened. And if it works, in 2 years, we're going to legalize. But man, they exactly know what is going to happen. They know they have the same data as we have. They do. They're just using these 2 years to put in place a monopoly of pharmaceutical industry, of big suppliers. Yep. And in 2 years, when they're going to say, okay, now it's legal, the small producer are going to be totally left out. Mm-hmm. And it's there is kind of measures that I'm afraid can come up. Is like first the monopoly for all the high concentration going to be taken off, even on a non-medical market. I mean, even for us as CBD brand, they're going to take over this. And it just 2 years to put in place a governmental monopoly that living out of the small entrepreneurs, all the people that fight for the cause, and just so this is to come back to your point. They're taking over now, and like they're gonna come. We won't even have the chance to say anything. It's gonna be
exactly, because while this is already happening, people are in each other's ears, whisper, 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 whisper. We're still trying to unify. We're still trying to go, come here, can I push back? We're just fucking getting the football shirts onto the fucking, that's all we're doing. We're getting dressed. The other team are out fucking playing already. Do you know what I mean? There's nobody on the fucking pitch.
They're 3 goals up. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, so this is my frustration. It's not a defeatist thing, even though you could argue that it would be, but it could be argued that it's a realistic thing as well. My frustration is, I think we obviously need to unify, but do we need to unify in the initial pushback? Because here's the thing, we won't make it in time. We fucking won't make it in time. We're going to have to push back against 48 fucking laws after 2 years of fucking testing and data stuff. Go ahead.
45.
Sorry?
45.
I thought you were just going, shut the fuck up, I want to get in here.
No, never be so rude. No, you're right though, in terms of if we try and at the first hurdle get everybody together and go, here's 500 pages of every detail worked out perfectly. It can't happen. We need real world experience to be able to sand the rough edges, to be able to polish this thing and see what it really looks like. So what needs to happen first, in my opinion, is the collective agreement on just some core cornerstones of ideals, some ideas, philosophies, or concepts that are applicable to every culture, that are applicable to all cultures around the world around cannabis, because all of the cultures are different and diverse, and they come from very different sides of this. Some have literally never stopped their historic cultivation. They never really had a war on drugs. Some were facing the death penalty and now looking at creating tourism hotspots. So there's all these kind of economic sort of creativity being explored around the world, but the underclass, the people that were already here, the millions of consumers, are not really getting that voice. But I think collectively all they want is A, piece of the pie, B, to not be criminalized, and C, to have that fair opportunity to have their voices and their experiences validated, so that when these huge corporations come, it's not just, oh, this guy's got a business degree, oh, this guy's an amazing accountant, this guy's an amazing lawyer, and they present this as this amazing cannabis dream team that's going to create the best cannabis industry. It's like, no, you need people with that lived experience. There are more people in prison now that know more about cannabis than are in all of the boardrooms of all of these companies combined. I can guarantee you that to be true without even having to think about statistics, because it's evident. It is self-fucking evident. Because if you get to a level of sophistication and scale during prohibition, you're a hell of a grower. If you can keep a 2,000 plant grow undercover for a decade and only get caught out because one of your growers was an idiot and got caught stoned driving one day, then you deserve to be in an internationally accredited warehouse somewhere. You deserve to be in the field. You deserve to have that lived experience validated. And I think those are the conversations that are not being had. In America and Canada, they're talking about expungement. They're talking about, oh, we'll just rub it off your record. But still, in a lot of places, it's not actually gone from your record. It's just gone from what would be the superficial first check. If you then went to get checked around working with children or etc., you would still be flagged for this. They're still going to punitively harm you and make you carry this Scarlet A or star or whatever sort of iconography you want to bring to mind for the rest of their life, because of something that they did at a time where the establishment said was wrong, that now the establishment is making profit from. And so again, expungement doesn't go far enough. even the idea of going into deprived areas and giving them economic first dibs still doesn't go far enough. You need to take from the international companies that are making these ungodly sums of money and pump them straight back into it, whether they have connection to those communities or not. Because there are still more people living in poverty and living in deprived socio-economic situations as a consequence of prohibition that never dealt drugs, that never consumed drugs, that because of certain decisions made by, say, in the UK, of the South, the ruling South going, oh, the druggy North, being able to use the war on drugs to decimate certain communities just because certain prime ministers disliked the backlash that they gave to certain events. It's bullshit. We're suffering under the historic ignorance and hate and idiocy of previous generations of leaders and thought leaders that created these policies, while at the same time now denying those same revolutionaries, those same dreamers, if you want to call them that, those same visionaries, the opportunity to voice their opinion without them then going, you do drugs and drugs are illegal, ergo I don't have to listen to you because you're a bad person. I see that every day with some of the smartest people I know are denied access to a conversation and not given that seat and that opportunity to speak their narrative because of their drug consumption, their history, their culture, their dress sense, their haircut. Do you know what I mean? This discrimination that you see from this elite that have moved into the cannabis industry that they've created, that don't consume cannabis, that never did. They grew up going, oh, yes, I smell weed, and oh, yeah, druggies. They were the same kind of people that when they saw the arrests in papers when it was illegal, going, yeah. But now it's legal. They're all happy to be on the cover of magazines and posing with cannabis plants and thinking that they're great, when they didn't have the fortitude or the passion or the decency to stand for this when it was illegal. Sorry, I went on one there.
You did.
Yeah. You know, to come back to a point about the companies that we don't want to be left over when the buyers come. I believe they're gonna need us. They're gonna need us because we do have the knowledge, we do have the communities, we do have the influence, the authority today, and that's why I believe they will need us. So that when exactly we need to unify, for example, Herb & Co, I really wanted to make it, but then because of the legislation, I had a lot of trouble to find companies, because I opened in 19, Herb & Co, so it's a lot changed since 19. But I had a lot of trouble to find companies and employees, but I wanted to list it, for example, as you said, all the growers, that can grow, and all the people that know how to build hydrogen stuff, and kind of have this catalog of cannabis talent that can be presented to a company when needed. And I believe that the big names of the European industry today, I don't think it's myself. I believe there is way much bigger. I'm making sure we don't think I'm talking about me. The big name of the company need to be able to present the smaller people to the big ones. For example, I don't have a straight example now, but that's when the unification must come, the unification of the talents to push each other, to present each other to the other one, like the one that have the connection to the big one, like let's present this because he do it for a long time, he deserve it, so that's when the solidarity and the unification must come, I guess. But they're gonna need us, and I think if we are aware of our power, we can really make it work for us in general.
Almost like a socio-capitalist kind of a thing, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. For sure. I mean, if you're in the cannabis industry, you can't really be capitalist. For me, I do love money because I believe I can change the world with money, but it's not capitalism. I don't want money to accumulate stuff. I want money because I can change things with money. Thanks to my money. Thanks to my money. Thanks to money, I could put CBD in a lot of houses, you know, and like thanks to money, I could promote a new company that is promoting the weed, you know. So that is why on my side I like money, but I don't know why we were talking about money, but all that to say that you can't really be a capitalist if you're in the cannabis. But still, you can integrate the capitalist with the cannabis mind.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sort of reminded of Trev Coleman's quote of cannabis is a capitalist resource with a socialist agenda. And it's kind of true, because then wherever we see cannabis profits accelerating in regions, say like Colorado, it does a lot of social good. They end up reinvesting it into education, into infrastructure, and then it leads to measures decriminalizing, say, entheogenic substances. It then leads to conversations around, say, places like Oregon, decriminalizing very small personal possession of all drugs. So we then do see those kind of changes. And I think, cannabis in its nature, I think the people who will seek to profit from it but will not consume it will not get the message, as it were. They will not, without getting too spiritual, kind of hear it speak to them. You know what I mean? They won't get that moment of going, oh shit, that's what it's about. And all of a sudden they'll look at their branding, they'll look at their advertising, they'll look at their culture within the business and kind of go, oh, we missed it. We've missed it. Let's start again. Do you know what I mean? And I think that if we can encourage that kind of hyper normalization of cannabis to a certain degree, that it is so just present and ubiquitous in culture that it can counteract, say, cocaine culture and alcohol, or what is the combination is cocaethylene, which is a very dangerous substance when you put it in the boardroom alongside a higher prevalence of psychopathy. The combination of these things typically leads to some very dangerous socioeconomic consequences. And I think that, again, switching that out for cannabis consumers, it adds that sympathy, that empathy, that compassion, and that kind of, even, yes, the paranoia to a certain degree to the business, to allow them to not operate with too much hubris and too much ego and kind of question what they're doing, rather than just going, let's go for the old traditional model. Why are you laughing at me?
Sorry, I just had this like random, like vivid image come into my head of just the House of Lords, where everybody's absolutely fucking blitzkrieg after smoking blunts. Every one of them just fucking passed out asleep. And do you know what I mean? Like, you know, paper bags everywhere, food and a whole lot. It'd probably be a good thing.
But that's the vision that I have. Wherever alcohol would be available, cannabis would be available. In that sense, that we would then create that option for consumption, but then it would also be available in its own unique spaces. I think the multi-faceted nature of cannabis and the extreme diversity of consumers means that clubs shouldn't just look like 18 to 34 retreats. What am I trying to pull out? You know, those kind of holidays for young singles. It shouldn't look like that kind of experience. Some should, because that's what they're catering to, a corner of the market. But if we then try to,
I want a health spa.
If we try and pigeonhole cannabis lounges, clubs, dispensaries, whatever, to be this is cannabis culture, and kind of force everybody through that channel, and then we wonder why these sort of young teens, late teens are all acting the same, wanting the same brands and the same hype, rather than wanting substance and education, rather than wanting to grow their own and be self-sufficient, learn about the plant, create their own cultivars because they best suit them as individuals. They want to have that money lifestyle. They want to live that kind of that life. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong, but that shouldn't be the only incentivization in our culture, especially as a wide cannabis culture. We kind of, from all generations and from all walks of life, all classes and backgrounds, need to carve out our corner and our niche. And I think only when we can define ourselves within the larger cannabis community, we can all speak in unification, because a lot of us don't know why we're opposed to medical cannabis. Some people don't know why they're opposed to recreational cannabis. Some people don't, do you know what I mean? They're so within their own limited understanding of cannabis that the other is a potential harm to their worldview and their ideal legalization or their ideal decriminalization. And so we appear to be a threat to each other rather than an ally. We look like crabs in a bucket. You put crabs in a bucket and one of them tries to escape, the other crab pulls it down. There's like an instinctual spitefulness there of going, no, we're all going down together. And that's what kind of happens here. So we see it in movements around the world, that when a medical movement, an industrial movement, a recreational freedom movement, a right to whatever the root of the campaign, it gets ever narrower until it then falls to a point where more people fall outside of that campaign than within inside of it. And I think that's what's happening within medical cannabis in the UK. You're told you either go to your doctor, get a prescription, here you go, then you can post it on Facebook, then you can have your pictures of your joints and you can be proudly sharing your pictures because you know if the police came to your house, you can go, I've got a piece of paper that says I'm protected. But where were you for 5-6 years when you've been buying off that illegal market, when you've been supporting the unregulated consumer dealers and growers and cultivators? Do you know what I mean? The hypocrisy there, I think, is not their fault, because we all want to feel safe. We all want, as I described earlier, to not have that anxiety when the blue light goes. We want to be able to live our life freely. And if they then offer us a way out, it's like you're locked in a snake pit and they then go, here's a rope, and the only rope is medical cannabis. And I think that's kind of what they're going to do with different things, is they'll dangle little ropes and they'll pull enough of us out of the pit until the rebels, the hardcore, the extremist like me will just look like a lunatic.
You're a softie. What are you on about? You're a fucking cuddly teddy bear. Fuck's sake.
Not in my actions, but in my ideology, in my philosophy. Do you know what I mean? In that sense, I'm dangerous to the establishment. I'm not a threat physically. I'm not liable or likely to do anything to physically harm another. I'm a pacifist by nature. But ultimately, I am willing to dedicate my life to the argument that the war only ends when all of the legal oppression is over.
Yes, it does. But the war isn't over if there are minor setbacks.
Right, they're the battles, not the war.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So it's not just because some seek safety, and I don't begrudge them that in the fucking slightest, and obviously neither do you. It's a case of just ensuring that there's no fall off, and that responsibility lies with us. That grand, you have your safety, but fucking stay in the fight, lad. Do you know that kind of way? Come the fuck on. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's a lot more that fucking needed. Do you know that kind of way? So and here's the thing, it'll be a stepped battle, because the more they get it, you know what I mean, we'll still be boxed off. We'll still have the 49.5 laws. That was a joke. I know, you dickhead.
476. We'll keep adding.
We'll still have all of these hoops to jump through. But it goes back to reunification. You like the re-legalization. Reunify. That's what we fucking need to do. And how do we do that? Well, we know that we're being polarized on purpose. We know that we're being offered diluted and twisted information to keep us in our fucking boxes while we actually agree fundamentally on the same thing. So we can fucking deconvolute the situation, and just like you alluded to earlier, make generalized points that are, you know, informed enough so that we can all move forward onto each log together, to use your analogy from earlier. So that's all we have to do. But here's the thing, it's going to take some time. It will do. So we should measure our expectation to push back against whatever fucking shite that they hand us, hand to us, because we're, you know, 6 laps behind the race leader. Anyway, that's me. I'm going to shut up.
No, good point. I think we've kind of waffled a lot about legalization. We got stuck in this kind of loop that we always do.
And also to come back on one of your points, I don't remember, but at some point I think you found, I wanted to add something about normalization, because during your talk something made me think about it. But I think also one of the things we have to do to help the cause, to help people to be on our side, to be on the cannabis community side, after the education, is the normalization. You know, I think we need to be able to show cannabis more and more to people, and put it everywhere. You know, like for example, Fast Free Urban Co, we tried to make events in a yoga center. We make events in like bars, like we made like a cocktail with serpent. We're really trying to put cannabis everywhere, so people are not shocked anymore when they see it. People are not afraid anymore. They're more and more receptive, and I think also for example, through the social media also is helping a lot to democratize, people seeing weed, I know I'm more in the UK community, you have a lot of different people showing cannabis side. I'm thinking about Nina, Womanhood of UK. You have a cannabis activist. I mean, they are not stoners. They are all different profile, and I believe that these people are also helping a lot the people to see cannabis on the other side and to join the cause, or at least to not be against. And this is also, I think, one of the big things, put cannabis everywhere, and that's what I'm trying to do with my own social media, is really trying to show you can smoke all the time, you can smoke and be for that's basic to say that, but really try to put it all the time everywhere, so people are just used to see it and they just accept it more and more, like alcohol and
Yes, you're right.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the diversity of that exposure as well that really helps. So in my head there, I was kind of thinking of, in America, you've got Snoop Dogg owns a cannabis company, but so does Martha Stewart. So they're kind of polarized in some way, but then they've done a crossover cannabis cooking show together, and it shows that once you kind of remove the stigma that's enforced by the law, all of these wider communities can kind of see each other and recognize and go, shit, you smoke weed too? I had no idea. I'm thinking of a meme in my head that I've seen, which is like a father and a son. And the first one is a dad sat in his room smoking a bong. And the other one is a kid sat in his room smoking a joint out the window. And the panels in the caption above them is both, I really wish I knew how to connect with my father. I really wish I knew how to connect with my son. Because it silences us. The law and the stigma removes our voice. And so for the few that are first then brave enough to kind of show that, wait a minute, you can do this and there's very little consequence, and you can actually then create a space in a little community all your own where you can explore cannabis publicly in a safer forum, that rather than just sounding and seeming like a lunatic dressing in a giant weed leaf suit or whatever and running into the street and shouting about it, you can safely build up to those levels. I mean, the ultimate and simplest act of activism in cannabis, I suppose in anything, is by doing the thing. So by being seen consuming cannabis, you are doing far more than the person who sits quietly in their room with posters everywhere and enjoys all the films and whatever, but never goes out and says anything to anybody.
That's me.
That wasn't a dig, but obviously people are in these positions for different reasons. Some have a limitation because of their geographical location, because of the rules and legislations in their area. Some have it because of the children, for example, and they fear that the state would take away their children. Some fear it for the stigma and bullying that they would face from colleagues at work. There is so many levels of stigma that come with this. It's not just the, oh, you stoner, oh, you got red eye, and any of the cliched jokes that you'll hear from people. It's really nuanced bullshit you will face in your daily life. They will not take any opinion seriously, because they will suddenly be able to go, you were high. Well, look at him. He's off his rocker again, when you're presenting something serious, because they immediately have lost that respect for you. And not only that, the law tells them they're right in doing that. And it creates that toxic loop in their head. So the more that they can do that and demonize them, the better they feel about themselves. And it gives that neurological feedback that they're going, oh, I'm a good person. I'm a good person. And society tells me I'm a good person. Do you know what I mean? And it builds up the average prohibitionist to be so ignorant, but so fueled with confidence because they're right. The law, I can just ring the police. In their mind, they are.
I know what you mean.
They can ring the police. They could have you arrested. They can have your home searched. So all they've got to do,
prick is what you can be.
But they can threaten you in a confrontation. So then, if you are just your average cannabis consumer and you can't wear a t-shirt with a cannabis leaf on, you can't be seen. You have to worry about how you smell in certain situations.
Yeah.
You're living such a no offense. I don't mean this to be personalized.
It's fine.
But you end up living a much smaller life, not because of who you are or the limitations of your personality, but because of the pressures from external forces, which limit you from being free. So even if you don't have the highest ambition in life, you are still limited by your possibility and your potential. So this is why we need that respect and to pay it forward amongst people.
There is something else to be added into that example as well, and the more sort of I don't want to say progressed, and I don't want to say successful, but the more that you have, say, to use a sort of a capitalist trope, the more you've got to lose. Now, that's something else. So just a slight personalization for me, and I still have my hang-ups, and I won't go into them. I'm not looking for any sort of psychological help, and even though I probably should fucking seek it at some point. But the point I'm trying to make is, at this stage in my life, I'm a lot more conscious of some of the things that I choose to do. Whereas if I was 10 years ago, I think I'd be a lot more brash than I am, and I'm brash as it is. So I understand your point from a generalist perspective 100%, but there's an awful lot more context that goes on, especially with, people that give a shit. It doesn't matter what it's about. It doesn't matter whether it's money, whether it's fucking your wealth or your job or whatever. If you give a shit about something and and you have an awful lot of stuff that you give a shit about, not just one thing, say you have 10 things, do you know that kind of way? And every single fucking one of them are at risk because of this piece of paper over here that was written 60 fucking years ago, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? I can see why there are 5 million plus, I think that number is low, 5 million plus consumers of cannabis in the UK. Where the fuck are you? Where are you? Where are you? Seriously. Here's the thing. I know you're there, but I ask that question very flippantly because I know the answer. You're somewhere where I am in the fucking middle. You're here. You're not sure which way you want to fucking go, and I don't fucking blame you for it. I get it. Do you know that kind of way? But this is one of the reasons why even though I'm not a visible consumer, I'm visibly here. The assumptions can be made. You don't have to be a fucking rocket science to understand it. Do you know that kind of way? Why am I here? Do you know that kind of way? So it's a case of, I've done that part. I'm still working on the other bits, but I know that I'm working on them. Do you know that kind of way? None of this is a justification. I only opened this door because I think that it offers a small bit more context into why we have this problem. Why, there aren't 5 million people willing to get out of the closet right now and just march out in the fuck street all the way down into the fucking government. Imagine 5 million people walking down to the fucking it wouldn't even be fucking possible. You couldn't even fucking do it. Or you can imagine it. There is no answer to that. You can't police it. You can't fucking do any of those things. Do you know that kind of way? So it needs to happen. It needs to happen, but we've got to be very sort of a small bit individualized in terms of, in our approach. We can't just blanket this.
I think it's everyone has a path within this. I think it would be cliche to call it, say, an awakening or any of those kind of things, because it's kind of not. It's more an unveiling. And so the truth is always there, but they've thrown this shroud of propaganda and prohibition over the top of it. And we've looked at it, and every time we've glimpsed it throughout our lives and gone, oh, that's the thing. And it's not until the subject becomes relevant to you that you kind of peel it up and go, what the hell is this thing?
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? And that takes some people, it started incredibly early with me. I was exposed and experienced in drugs at a very young age, and the culture and the benefits that I got from the interactions that I had in the community that I found helped shape and inform my decisions in the rest of my life. Through that snowball of events, led me to be as active as I am now. And for all, I understand what you're saying about risk and as a sort of disincentive from speaking out. I feel I've got a lot to risk, but I feel within myself, having lived a lot of the experiences that I speak of, directly understanding them, that I'd be too disingenuous to myself to not then speak that. And I think that everyone arrives at that point at some time, whether it is even a few drinks into something, or whether it's an ecstasy experience, whether it's feeling comfortable at a festival or a gathering or some sort of assortment and community of people that then allow you to speak that kind of truth. And then once you verbalize it and allow it into the world, you can't help but then go down that road. Once you allow that truth into your brain, you break down that cognitive dissonance, the little barrier in your brain that can literally go, oh yeah, cannabis is a medicine, it should be legalized and no one's ever died off it, but at the same time then sees a criminal gang that's stealing electricity or whatever and then go, yeah, that's why cannabis is illegal.
Yeah,
you can't quite, they haven't got to the point where they've looked at all of the things and gone, yeah, something's wrong here and it's not me. And when people arrive at that point, that's when they can really take those steps. And that's when they first start by talking to a friend, telling their partner. I mean, I know mates that have hidden it from like girlfriends they've been in relationships with for decades, with air freshener, with body spray, with chewing gum and shit. No, but then the partner obviously wants to believe the lie as well. So, but because that's part of it, we end up losing again. It's the consequences of the damage of prohibition on the human psyche and what it's done to our culture harms the people who don't even think they interact with drugs. They're going, I've never known a druggie. When the mom has got a serious prescription pill problem, the brother might have a serious cocaine problem. Do you know what I'm saying? The children, it's because they're not aware of the thing. Doesn't mean it's not there. And I think that once people can kind of, the unveiling of that truth happens, you then, if you can find that fortitude, you can tear it off and see the beast for what it is, and understand that the consequences of the war on drugs have informed and shaped what is modern humanity now. Yeah. And a lot of the consequences we live under, be it environmental, social, economic, are a consequence of this. And cannabis it's the stopper, the plug on the dam, that once we pull it, it'll run through and it'll tear the concrete walls down. And we then get a bit of the equity that they've stolen from us. Because once cannabis gets legalized, descheduled, removed, and actually allowed to be available to the people, the larger conversations happen. And that money suddenly can come back into those communities and it tips the scales. And I think that's so why they're so adamant at trying to restrain this, why they're trying to do the French con, as we can call it, I suppose, or the way they're doing it with medical cannabis in the UK. They're trying to funnel and tune and delay till they've got the infrastructure to flip that switch so that it's not them pulling the bung of cannabis deschedulization and everything falls. They've created a nice little groove and some channels. So they continue. They'll never give us that wealth. They'll never enrich our communities again. They will siphon it off. But we are the first generation, I think, in a long time to have the power, the capability, the knowledge and the passion, and frankly, the balls. That's gender bias, the fortitude, the genitalia to do something about it. We are really capable. We can, if all hands together, all them ropes, to continue that analogy, and pull that bung out of the dam, it will break. And that's why they're throwing everything they can to break up our communities. Just because they're not then raiding clubs or then raiding organizations and certain movements doesn't mean they're not infiltrating. Doesn't mean they're not spreading misinformation. Doesn't mean they're not targeting us. Do you know what I mean? The powers that they have in terms of manipulation of algorithms, direct advertising, social media, etc., is enormous when you start to look at the scale of the people that are invested in this. So you've got to think that the power that is in the individual to weaponize social media against this monolith of prohibition, or prohibition 2.0 rather, this new legalization, is immense. I mean, I just want to, again, I think I did it the other night on the Women of Weed live that we did. I want to shout out Instagram. For some reason, over the past 2 days, my Discover page is full of cannabis content again. It hasn't been for like 18 months to 2 years, but now I scroll and out of the 12 images, like 8 of them, 9 of them are cannabis accounts that I've never seen before. New content, new exposure, an opportunity to I'm excited again to engage with the platform because it's new people, new voices, new knowledge. And I don't know if something's deliberately happened or whether I'm just a lucky few, but I hope that it proliferates and more people get this, because that's the power we have. We have I was going to grab my phone for emphasis, but in the phone, the ability to communicate and connect with each other at any point, to share our experience and our knowledge, so they can pump out whatever story they want in the media. They can try and get us to think of an experiment or a trial one way while they're actually conducting something else, but the truth will come out. There are people that see bullshit, they smell bullshit, and they're going to call it out. And that's one of the wonderful things, I think, that motivates me, I suppose, to do this work. And I think it's probably the same is true with you, Clara.
No, I mean, social media is. I mean, today I believe cannabis has such a voice thanks to social media, and I believe today also more and more people allow themselves to speak, also because they are supported by the social media communities. For example, we know each other through social media, and I've been knowing the whole UK community through social media, and like I know that Women Widow of UK, they shared a lot of testimony of women, like moms, workers that say like I allow myself to speak thanks to you because they saw that there was other women. So I believe today social media is very, very unificator. You can unify. I don't know if it's a word that exists, but it's a really great to support each other, to tell our story, to show ourselves with cannabis, to say you're not alone. But as you said, they also have a huge power to shut us up, and to go to from my experience, I was shadow banned so many times. Like every time I was showing weed, for example, after for a week, I would have like 50 views on stories, and just for showing a flower once, and I'm like, they really, but I believe we're stronger than them and on the optimist side, and I just keep talking, even if it's for talking to one person. I believe stories have to be shared, and having an impact is not Instagram that gonna make us or not have an impact. We're gonna have it, yes or yes, and yeah, for sure. I believe social media has this two sides, but it's our choice to make the best of it.
Indeed. So, like I say, hopefully this is maybe a lull in shadow banning and an opportunity, because a lot of the hashtags that were previously banned for me are now available. So hopefully we can then use this as an opportunity now to flood those platforms with content to show them that, oh my God, the engagement far outweighs their false morals and their willingness to adhere to certain laws when they're quite happy to ignore other ones for tax purposes. So I think we have that power. And I think on that point, it's a wonderful opportunity to round this up. So you've got one final question that I'd like to ask, just something I ask every guest, which is, what does the future hold for you? What does the future hold for you?
The future is bright. A lot of blood flowers, a lot of people converted to cannabis, a lot of people helped with cannabis. I believe future, as you said, future is cannabis, and I believe it's coming now, and I don't see any future else. But that might be too lyric. On a personal level, my future holds on keep on pushing Herb & Co, hiring new freelancers, put the Tree CBD as a mondial leader, and just keep educating the most people I see, the most people I meet, and well, spread the love.
Spread the love. Yeah, keep educating the people, especially the people that have the opportunity to change.
Exactly, and I have one message every time for everybody that likes the plants. Is like whatever is your surrounding, whatever is like, educate your neighbor about the plant. You don't have to, for example, if it's your mom, you don't have to talk about cannabis. You can talk about hemp, about the environment benefits. If it's your doctor, you can just start talking about CBD. Does he know CBD? If it's your friend, maybe you can talk about. You can talk. Just educate everyone around you, and little by little, we're gonna win. We have this.
We'll chip away.
And thank you so much for this great talk.
It's a pleasure.
No worries.
Pleasure.
Excellent to have you. I'm not sure if Mr. Macca has pulled up, he's doing it now. We'll be pulling up your Instagram page and Herb & Co and Tree CBD to give people an idea of where they can keep up to date with your work. We will also be tagging the accounts below in the bio. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by my cat crawling on me for the people that can't see this in the video. But yeah, once again, Clara, thank you very much for coming on. It has been a pleasure. We'll have to have you back on in the future because I think I only got through half my questions. As usual. As usual. But yeah, guys, once again, thank you very much for listening, folks, and for viewing if you are on YouTube and Facebook. Please do check us out if you enjoyed this at patreon.com/Simpa Life, where you can help fund this little project of ours and help us get bigger and bigger guests and branch out into some bigger and bigger projects. We're available on most social media platforms at the Simpa Life. You can check me out doing a solo live every Thursday, and now live simultaneously on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. So do check that out at 7 p.m. every week. Right, it's been a pleasure. Peace, love, and good week, folks.
Good week or good weed?
Good week and good week. Good weed in your week. Peace and love.
Bye.